Hello, friends. Today I'm talking about narcissistic abuse, codependency, and self-love deficit. And I was thinking about this topic because in the School of Transformation, actually last year, we went through the publication, The Human Magnet Syndrome. And I really liked how Ross Rosenberg kind of had that scale, right? Because we're all on that scale. And it's like the scale is on this side is high on the scale of NPD. On this side is high on the scale of codependency. And looking or peeling back, well, codependent, like what exactly is that? What are you dependent for? And when you peel it back, what a lot of people in narcissistic codependent relationships are dependent on is self-love. Okay, so think about it for a second. If someone is in a relationship with a narcissist, someone high on the scale of NPD, and you know how we're always talking about certain behaviors that victims fall under, like being in that hamster wheel of trying harder and harder to please and please and please. Well, why does someone get into that hamster wheel? Why are they trying harder and harder to please? What are they wanting to get? They're wanting to get love, which is healthy. Like in a relationship, we want to feel loved. There's nothing wrong with wanting love from a relationship. But when you're in a relationship with somebody that they're way on the scale of of NPD, and you are unable to give any love to yourself, and you only feel lovable if that person validates your worth, then that's when there's a deficit of self-love. And let me tell you, at one time, when I was in a relationship with somebody that I feel was high on that scale, if somebody told me, Michele, you are chasing love and you're not giving it to yourself, it would have been like, I don't know, it would have been, I don't know if I would have, okay, I'm stuttering. It depends. It depends on where in that relationship, if you had told me that, because what I'm trying to say is that chasing love because you're not able to give it to yourself is so unconscious. It's not like you're doing it on purpose. It's not like you're saying, I'm unlovable. I need you to love me so that I can feel worthy. You're not saying that on a conscious level. You may not even be realizing that that's what's going on a subconscious level. I know in my case, if somebody had said that to me, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Of course I love myself. But no, I didn't realize the default patterns that were set in motion in myself from the time I was, a small child. If you were raised by a narcissistic parent, or you had a caregiver in your life that was high on the scale of NPD, they taught you that you were only allowed to feel good about yourself if they gave that stamp of approval, right? So if you were happy, sometimes they would get mad and shame you. And so on a subconscious level, they were teaching you, you're not allowed to feel happy unless I agree with you. So a lot of the behaviors that people that are now adults and they're in relationships with someone high on that scale, a lot of the behaviors they're in are subconscious patterns that they may not realize. And I say that because 100%, that was me at one time in my life. Okay, so if it stings a little to hear that, I get it, because when your eyes do open to realizing that that's what you're doing, it hurts. And it's painful to realize that that's a pattern that had been your whole life. Okay, so there's a self-love deficit that gets put into place because in childhood, you were never allowed to feel like you're allowed to love yourself, right? Your worth and your value was dependent on how your caregiver saw you. And if you had someone high on the scale of NPD, they taught you unconditional love. And they taught you and trained you to sacrifice you to try to get love from them. And so that's the pattern that can come up when you're in a relationship with somebody that's high on the scale. And some ways that you can tell if this is active in your life is if you're happy, and you are in your energy of you're like really proud of something you did at work, or maybe you're just enjoying something at home with the children, whatever it is, you're really happy. And they get mad and they say something to you like, what are you happy about? Maybe you did that, but you didn't do this. And again, that's their manipulative way of stamping out your happiness. If you're unable to stay in your energy, then this dynamic of if you're happy with me and you love me, then I can stay in this energy. This pattern is active. Now, I'm not saying that if you're happy and somebody makes a rude remark that doesn't bother you, because we're human. We are human. And if somebody says something, we're going to acknowledge that, wow, that's just really messed up, that every time I'm happy, this person has to say something unkind and, saying something to try to take it away. That sucks. Like, we have to validate that reality. But when we're broken out of that dynamic of being dependent on them to feel good inside, we'll say something like this inside. We'll be like, okay, well, that sucks that they're like that. I never wanted a one-sided relationship. I never wanted somebody that, couldn't support me when I'm in a good mood. It really sucks to see that. But even though they're like that, I'm so glad that I'm able to stay me. And I am allowed to be proud of what happened today. And I'm allowed to enjoy this, or I'm allowed to do this. And we slip back into giving ourselves permission to stay in our energy, to love ourselves, to enjoy, even if that person is spewing negative energy, depending on where you're at in your journey of recovery, of recovering from narcissistic abuse. If you're at the very beginning, you're probably listening to this and saying something like, that is impossible. It is impossible for me to stay in my energy when they're like that. And I get that. When I first heard this information like this, I was like, yeah, right. Do you realize what you're saying? If I stay happy, they're going to be even worse. They're going to get even more angry. And then I listened to what I was saying. I was like, wait a second. So that means I have to not be happy so that they feel good. My job is to regulate them so that they don't get out of control. That doesn't make sense. But in the beginning, if you're at the beginning of your healing journey, I just want to let you know that I get it. When you first hear this information, it's kind of, hard to swallow. So that's okay. If you're further along, you start to acknowledge that that's logically making sense, but you start to realize that the body and the emotions, even if you logically know how to be so that you can love yourself despite them, you start to see there's a conflict inside. Your conscious mind wants to do it, but your subconscious is pulling you in the other way. And that's because a lot of narcissistic abuse, that belief that I am enough, that I'm allowed to feel happy, I am allowed to be myself, even if somebody's upset, all those healthy beliefs, the narcissist has worked really hard to infiltrate your subconscious so that you don't have them. And so consciously you want to, but you don't have the programs in your subconscious. And that's that push and pull. Okay. And that's where CPTSD recovery is so important when it comes to narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse is what happened to you. It's what they did to you. It's what they may still be doing to you. CPTSD recovery is when you go in and you kind of uproot the negative traumatic beliefs that they planted inside of you. I said in an Instagram post not too long ago, I likened narcissistic abuse to being bombed, right? Like physical warfare, except this is emotional warfare. You're constantly being bombed. You're constantly being, your inner terrain is being violated by these negative thought patterns that they're putting into you, these negative beliefs that they're instilling in you. These emotional grenades are going off all the time because that's their punishment anytime you try to act outside of what they want you to be. That's narcissistic abuse. Now, there's a lot of emphasis on just leaving, And I get it. Like when somebody's being bombed physically or emotionally, obviously the first step is to get yourself safe so that that doesn't happen anymore. But I'm trying to spread awareness that that's not enough. You can leave that environment and everything they threw at you and all those traumatic beliefs that they planted in you will still be active in your subconscious and in your nervous system until you do the inner work to uproot them. And that's very much like physical warfare. If a place is being bombed and then it stops, the bombing stops, the place that was bombed isn't like totally fine overnight. There is a rebuilding process that will have to take place. And it takes patience and it takes time and it takes effort to rebuild what those bombs destroyed, the terrain that those bombs destroyed. Well, CPTSD recovery is about the inner terrain and rebuilding it. And so I want to encourage anyone that is undergoing narcissistic abuse and you're feeling like this has changed who you are and you're unable to kind of feel good from within. You're unable to have that agency that allows you to create from within the self-worth, the self-love that you deserve. As you're learning about the narcissist, make sure you move into CPTSD recovery as well, because that's what's going to change your inner terrain. And if you need help with that, make sure you check out the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live on Zoom weekly and we do the inner work together. The month of June is all about overcoming self-love deficit. And also you may want to check out my other channel, which is just designed specifically for CPTSD recovery. But either way, find resources that are going to help you to shift into healing your inner terrain so that not only does the abuse stop, but so that you're not living with the side effects of it for the rest of your life.